Red Bull reveal plans to go all out on the championship. Hamilton gives brutal update on Ferrari's progress and all the latest F1 news. Max Verstappen just pulled off something absolutely incredible, and Lando Norris is sitting there with the biggest grin saying he saw it coming all along. We're talking about one of the most dramatic championship comebacks in recent memory. And trust me, you're going to want to stick around because this story has more twists than a Monaco street circuit. Let me paint the picture for you. Just a few weeks ago, Max Verstappen was looking at a mountain that seemed impossible to climb. We're talking about a 104-point deficit after the Dutch Grand Prix. That's not just a gap, that's a canyon. Oscar Piastri was sitting pretty at the top of the championship standings, probably already measuring his trophy cabinet. Meanwhile, everyone was writing obituaries for Red Bull's 2025 campaign. But here's where it gets juicy. While the entire Formula One world was busy declaring McLaren unstoppable and Red Bull finished, there was one voice cutting through the noise. Lando Norris, of all people, kept saying something that nobody wanted to hear. He kept insisting that Red Bull wasn't actually that slow, and McLaren's advantage wasn't as big as everyone thought. Fast forward to Monza and Baku, and suddenly the championship fight looks completely different. Verstappen didn't just win these races, he dominated them from start to finish. We're talking about lights-to-flag victories that reminded everyone exactly why this guy is considered one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history. The numbers tell an incredible story. In just 2 races, Verstappen clawed back 35 points from Piastri's lead. That's massive. We went from Piastri having a comfortable 104-point advantage to suddenly looking over his shoulder at a 69-point gap. And Norris? His deficit to Verstappen shrunk from 91 points to just 44. That's the kind of momentum shift that championships are made of. But here's what makes Norris's reaction so fascinating. Instead of panicking or making excuses, he's basically standing there saying he told everyone so. After the Azerbaijan race, he dropped some truth bombs that hit different. He pointed out that people need to stop acting surprised when Red Bull shows speed because, and I quote his sentiment, "It's not often that they're genuinely slow. Think about it logically. This is the same Red Bull team that has been the benchmark in Formula One for years. They have Max Verstappen, who many consider one of the best drivers ever to sit in an F1 car. They have Adrian Newey's aerodynamic genius, even if he's leaving. They have a deep understanding of what makes a championship-winning car tick." Norris explained that Max was already winning races at the beginning of the season. Red Bull brought upgrades to Monza that seemed to unlock even more performance. This wasn't some miraculous turnaround. It was a methodical return to form that anyone paying close attention could see coming. What's really telling is how Norris described following the Red Bull during the race. He admitted there were areas where they were operating at another level compared to McLaren. That's the kind of honest assessment you get from a driver who understands exactly what he's up against. The championship math is still brutal for Verstappen though. A 69-point deficit with 7 races remaining isn't just challenging, it's historically difficult. In 2022, Verstappen managed to overcome a 46-point gap to deny Charles Leclerc his first championship, but that was a smaller mountain to climb. Verstappen himself isn't getting carried away with championship dreams. He's taking the pragmatic approach, focusing race by race rather than getting caught up in the big picture. That's championship mentality right there. Don't rely on hope, rely on performance. But here's what makes this situation so compelling. We're not just watching a mathematical comeback, we're watching psychology in action. McLaren went from feeling invincible to suddenly realizing they're in a real fight. That pressure can do strange things to a team that's not used to defending a championship lead. Red Bull, on the other hand, knows exactly what championship pressure feels like. They've been here before, they've won from behind before, and they have the experience to handle these moments. That's not something you can quantify in points or lap times, but it's absolutely crucial in tight championship battles. The timing of this resurgence is perfect for creating maximum drama. We're entering the final stretch of the season where every point matters exponentially. One mechanical failure, one strategic mistake, one moment of bad luck can completely change the championship picture. Norris fears this Red Bull comeback might just be getting started. And honestly, that's probably the scariest part for McLaren and Piastri. If Verstappen can take 35 points in 2 races, what happens if Red Bull finds even more performance in their upgrades? The beauty of this situation is that it validates something fundamental about Formula One. Championships aren't won on paper, they're won on track. All the mathematical projections and early season dominance mean nothing if you can't maintain that performance when it matters most. So here we are, with 7 races remaining and a championship fight that nobody saw coming just a month ago. Verstappen needs more than just speed. He needs perfection and probably some luck too. But if there's anyone who can overturn history, it's the guy who just reminded everyone exactly why he's a 3-time world champion. This is why we love Formula One, people. Just when you think you know how the story ends, someone rewrites the script entirely. Wait, did you just witness one of the most shocking confessions in Formula One history? Because Lewis Hamilton just dropped a bombshell that nobody saw coming, and it's about to change everything you think you know about Ferrari's 2025 season. Picture this. You're Lewis Hamilton, 7-time world champion, racing legend, and you've just joined the most iconic team in Formula One history. Everyone expects magic, fireworks, championship battles. Instead, you're standing in front of cameras after another disappointing weekend, essentially telling the world that your new team is doomed for the rest of the season. That's exactly what happened at Baku, and the implications are absolutely staggering. Let me paint you the full picture of what went down at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, because this story has layers that go way deeper than just one bad weekend. Ferrari rolled into Baku with genuine hope. They topped the practice sessions, looking fast, looking competitive. Fans started dreaming again, thinking maybe, just maybe, this was the turnaround they'd been waiting for all season. Then reality hit like a freight train. Hamilton got knocked out in Q2. Qualifying was a disaster, and Charles Leclerc crashed during his crucial Q3 run. Race day? Even worse. The best they could manage was 8th and 9th place. But here's the kicker. People were actually relieved because it wasn't a complete catastrophe. Think about that for a second. Ferrari has fallen so far that fans celebrate not being absolutely terrible. But the real story isn't the race results. It's what Hamilton said afterward that sent shockwaves through the paddock. When asked if Ferrari could challenge the frontrunners, his response was brutally honest and absolutely devastating. He didn't sugarcoat anything, didn't give the typical diplomatic racing driver answer. He laid out the harsh truth with surgical precision. Hamilton pointed out something that should terrify every Ferrari fan. While their rivals have been upgrading and improving throughout the season, Ferrari has been standing still. McLaren has been ahead all year, he said, and Ferrari hasn't made any meaningful steps forward. Meanwhile, Red Bull just brought an upgraded floor that's already showing results. The gap isn't closing, it's getting wider. Here's where it gets really interesting from a strategic perspective. Hamilton mentioned something that reveals the deeper problem at Ferrari right now. He said he would give anything for an upgrade, but the team doesn't have any coming. Why? Because they've already shifted their focus to next year's car and the massive regulatory changes coming in 2026. This is where you need to understand the bigger Formula One picture. The sport is heading toward a complete technical revolution in 2026, with new engine regulations and chassis requirements. Teams have to make a choice. Do you keep developing your current car and try to win races now, or do you sacrifice the present to get ahead for the future? Ferrari has clearly made their choice, but it's creating a massive problem for Hamilton and Leclerc. They're essentially driving a car that's no longer being developed, while their competitors continue pushing forward. It's like bringing a knife to a gunfight, except everyone else keeps getting bigger knives while you're stuck with the same one. The psychological impact of Hamilton's comments cannot be overstated. This isn't just any driver complaining about pace. This is Lewis Hamilton, a man who's won championships, who knows what it takes to succeed at the highest level. When he says Ferrari is multiple steps behind and won't be competitive for the rest of the season, people listen. Think about the pressure this puts on the entire Ferrari organization. Their fans, their sponsors, their employees, everyone is hearing their star driver essentially write off the remainder of the season. That's not the kind of statement you make unless you're absolutely certain about your assessment. But Hamilton's honesty also reveals something crucial about his character and his approach to this Ferrari challenge. He's not interested in false hope or empty promises. He's looking at the situation with clear eyes and calling it like he sees it. That might be exactly what Ferrari needs, someone willing to tell uncomfortable truths instead of maintaining polite fiction. The timing of these comments is particularly significant because we're at a critical juncture in the championship battle. Max Verstappen is fighting back, McLaren is looking dominant, and momentum is shifting rapidly. Ferrari's inability to capitalize on this moment could have lasting consequences beyond just 2025. What makes this situation even more fascinating is how it exposes the fundamental tension in modern Formula One between short-term success and long-term planning. Ferrari is betting everything on 2026, but what if their gamble doesn't pay off? What if other teams are also preparing for those regulations while still remaining competitive now? Hamilton's prediction creates a ripple effect throughout the sport. Other drivers and teams are watching, taking notes, adjusting their own strategies. When a champion of his caliber makes such a definitive statement about competitive prospects, it influences everything from driver market decisions to technical development priorities. The most intriguing aspect of this entire situation might be what it means for Hamilton's legacy and his relationship with Ferrari moving forward. He's made a bold prediction about his own team's inability to compete. Either he'll be proven right, which validates his assessment but means a disappointing season, or Ferrari will somehow prove him wrong, which would be an incredible story of resilience and development. As we head into the final races of 2025, Hamilton's words hang over Ferrari like a dark cloud. The question now isn't whether they can win races, according to their own driver, that ship has sailed. The question is whether they can prove that sometimes even the greatest champions can be wrong about what's possible in the unpredictable world of Formula One. What if I told you that one of Formula One's most promising young drivers just made mistakes that could cost him the championship, and a former F1 driver thinks it's exposing a much bigger problem at McLaren? Stick around, because what happened in Baku might change everything we thought we knew about this title fight. I'm talking about Oscar Piastri's disastrous weekend in Azerbaijan, where the championship leader went from hero to zero in spectacular fashion. But here's the thing that's got everyone talking. Former F1 driver Christijan Albers isn't just criticizing Piastri's performance. He's launching a full-scale attack on McLaren's entire operation, claiming that if you put drivers like Max Verstappen, George Russell, or Charles Leclerc in that same car, we'd be watching a completely different championship battle. Let's break down what actually happened in Baku, because this wasn't just one mistake. It was a cascade of errors that exposed some serious cracks in what many consider the most dominant team on the grid right now. The weekend started badly for McLaren, with Piastri crashing during qualifying, which should have been the first warning sign. Then Lando Norris could only manage 7th on the grid after clipping the wall himself. But race day? That's where things went from bad to absolutely catastrophic. Picture this. You're the championship leader, you've got everything to lose, and you're starting 9th on the grid. The lights go out, and instead of a clean getaway, Piastri jumps the start. Now, here's where Albers says the panic set in. According to the former F1 driver and current analyst, Piastri's reaction to that false start revealed everything wrong with his mental approach. Piastri hit the brakes, the car went into anti-stall mode, and he could only watch helplessly as the entire field streamed past him. Albers described it as painful to watch, saying the young Australian wasn't consistent and clearly wasn't on top of his game. But that was just the beginning of his nightmare. Desperate to recover positions as quickly as possible, Piastri found himself battling with Nico Hülkenberg. Trying to overtake around the outside of turn 5, he locked up his brakes on the dirty part of the track and went nose first into the barrier. Race over. His incredible 34 race point scoring streak? Also over. Now here's where Albers' criticism gets really interesting and honestly pretty controversial. He's not just going after Piastri, he's taking aim at the entire McLaren operation, starting with team principal Andrea Stella. Despite the fact that Stella is potentially leading McLaren to their first championship double since 1998, Albers believes the Italian has been overhyped. His argument? McLaren has what he calls a hugely dominant car, but they're not maximizing its potential because of poor strategies and inconsistent drivers. Think about this for a second. McLaren has secured 13 Grand Prix wins this season and 7 1-2 finishes. By any measure, that's an incredible achievement. But Albers is essentially saying they're leaving performance on the table, and if they had different drivers in those seats, the championship would already be over. This raises a fascinating question about driver psychology and pressure. Piastri has been the model of consistency throughout most of this season, but when the pressure really mounted in Baku, we saw a completely different side of him. The false start, the panic, the desperate overtaking attempt, SP. None of this looked like the calculated, mature driver we've grown accustomed to watching. But let's talk about Andrea Stella for a moment, because Albers' criticism here is particularly sharp. He's comparing Stella to Andreas Seidl. the previous McLaren team principal who was also highly praised before moving to Sauber. Albers suggests that both men have been overhyped by the media and that McLaren's success is more about having a fantastic car than exceptional leadership. This is where things get really controversial, because Stella's track record speaks for itself. He worked with Michael Schumacher at Ferrari, joined McLaren as an engineer, worked his way up to racing director, and then became team principal. Under his leadership, McLaren has transformed from midfield runners to championship contenders. That doesn't happen by accident. Yet Albers insists that the strategies are bad and the drivers aren't consistent enough. His hypothetical scenario is provocative. Put Verstappen, Russell, or Leclerc in that McLaren, and according to him, we'd have a completely different championship fight. But here's what makes this criticism so interesting from a psychological perspective. Pressure affects different drivers in different ways. Verstappen has proven he can handle immense pressure, sometimes getting better as the stakes get higher. Russell has shown remarkable composure in high-pressure situations. Leclerc, despite some strategic disappointments at Ferrari, has consistently delivered stunning performances when it matters most. Piastri, on the other hand, is still learning how to handle championship pressure. This is his first real title fight, and Baku might have been the moment where that pressure finally got to him. The question is, does one bad weekend define a driver, or is it part of the learning process? Looking at the championship standings after Baku, Piastri's lead over Norris has shrunk to just 25 points. Meanwhile, Verstappen has closed the gap by 35 points in just 2 races, and now sits 69 points behind. The momentum has clearly shifted, and you have to wonder if Albers' criticism might actually prove prophetic. What makes this situation even more intriguing is the timing. We're heading into the business end of the championship, and psychological factors become massive. If Piastri is already showing signs of cracking under pressure, what happens when that pressure intensifies even further? The reality is that Albers might have a point about driver consistency, even if his criticism seems harsh. Championship-caliber drivers are defined by how they respond to adversity, not just how they perform when everything's going well. Baku was Piastri's first real test of championship mettle, and by most measures, he failed it spectacularly. So what does this mean for the rest of the season? Can Piastri bounce back from this setback and prove his critics wrong? Or will we see more evidence that he's not quite ready for the psychological demands of a title fight? One thing's for certain, the pressure isn't going away, and how he handles it will define not just this championship, but potentially his entire career. Picture this. Red Bull Racing just posted their financial accounts, and buried in those numbers is one of the most explosive stories in Formula One history. Christian Horner, the man who built Red Bull into a championship-winning machine, walked away with a settlement that could buy you several supercars and still have change left over. But here's the twist nobody saw coming. He actually got a pay raise right before getting the boot. Let me break down what just happened, because this story has more layers than a championship-winning race strategy. Red Bull Racing's 2024 financial documents have been filed, and they reveal a company swimming in cash while simultaneously cutting ties with the architect of their success. It's like watching a masterclass in corporate drama unfold in real time. The numbers are absolutely staggering. Red Bull Racing generated over £314 million in revenue during 2024. That's not just impressive, that's Formula One money at its finest. But here's where it gets interesting. Despite finishing second in the Constructors' Championship, they were still cashing checks based on their 2023 title win. The prize money distribution in Formula One works on a delayed system, so Red Bull was collecting roughly £64 million just from Formula One's official prize fund. But wait, there's more. That prize money represents less than a quarter of their total income. The remaining £250 million came from sponsorship deals, promotional partnerships, and commercial agreements. This is where Christian Horner's business acumen really shines through, because many of these deals were orchestrated during his tenure as team principal. Take their Oracle partnership, for instance. Industry insiders estimate this deal contributes around £70 million annually to Red Bull's coffers. Then there's their recently concluded Bybit cryptocurrency partnership, which reportedly brought in £35 million during 2024 alone. These weren't just random business deals, they were strategic partnerships that Horner helped negotiate and secure. The irony becomes crystal clear when you look at Horner's personal compensation. The man who was about to be shown the door received a pay increase to just over £7 million for 2024. Yes, you heard that correctly. While Red Bull executives were presumably planning his departure, they were simultaneously rewarding him with additional money. It's the kind of corporate contradiction that makes you wonder what conversations were happening behind closed doors. But the real bombshell dropped when news broke about Horner's settlement package. Industry sources suggest he walked away with approximately $100 million. That's not a typo, $100 million. To put that in perspective, that's more money than most Formula One drivers will earn in their entire careers. It's a settlement package that rivals the biggest payouts in professional sports history. Now, you might be thinking this sounds excessive, and at first glance, it absolutely does. But when you dig deeper into the numbers, a different picture emerges. Horner's contract ran until at least 2030, meaning Red Bull was essentially buying out 6 years of guaranteed employment. At his current salary rate, that alone accounts for roughly £40 million. But Horner wasn't just the team principal. He was a director of multiple Red Bull Formula One entities, each with its own compensation structure. More importantly, Horner's fingerprints are all over Red Bull's commercial success. The Oracle deal, the Bybit partnership, the Visa and Cash App sponsorships for their sister team Racing Bulls US Heaven, these weren't deals that happened in isolation. They were the result of Horner's relationships, his reputation, and his ability to sell the Red Bull brand to potential partners. Consider this. If Oracle's partnership contributes 70 million pounds annually, and that deal runs for multiple years, we're talking about hundreds of millions in revenue directly attributable to agreements Horner helped secure. Suddenly, a $100 million settlement doesn't look quite so outrageous when you consider the revenue streams he helped establish. The timing of everything raises fascinating questions about Red Bull's internal dynamics. Why give someone a pay raise if you're planning to terminate them? Was this settlement always part of a predetermined exit strategy? Or did something change dramatically between approving Horner's salary increase and deciding to part ways? What makes this story even more compelling is Red Bull's continued financial success throughout this transition. They posted increased profits while navigating what could have been a destabilizing leadership change. Their revenue grew by £7 million compared to their dominant 2023 season, proving that the Red Bull machine continues operating at peak efficiency regardless of internal upheaval. The settlement also positions Horner for an immediate return to Formula One if he chooses. Unlike typical non-compete agreements, this package appears to give him complete freedom to rejoin the paddock whenever he wants. That's significant because it suggests Red Bull wasn't trying to eliminate a competitor. They were simply closing a chapter in their organizational history. Looking at these financial documents, you see a team that's mastered the business side of Formula One just as effectively as they've mastered the sporting side. Red Bull Racing has become a revenue-generating juggernaut that transcends traditional motorsport economics. They've created a brand so valuable that paying $100 million to maintain that brand's integrity seems like sound business practice. The Christian Horner settlement represents more than just corporate accounting. It's a testament to how Formula One has evolved into a billion-dollar industry where the right leadership can be worth almost any price. Picture this. You're battling illness, barely feeling fit to race, yet you still manage to secure second place at one of Formula One's most demanding circuits. That's exactly what happened to George Russell at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, but here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Despite his heroic drive in Baku, Russell has just delivered a reality check that's sending shockwaves through the F1 paddock. The Mercedes driver, who many thought could challenge for third place in the championship, has essentially thrown in the towel when it comes to fighting Max Verstappen. But why would a driver who just achieved such an impressive result suddenly sound so defeated? The answer lies in something far more sinister than Russell's own performance. It's about recognizing a monster that's awakening just when everyone thought it was dormant. Max Verstappen, the three-time world champion who seemed to have lost his edge mid-season, is back with a vengeance, and Russell knows exactly what that means for everyone else on the grid. Let's rewind to understand how we got here. Earlier in the season, Verstappen looked vulnerable for the first time in years. Red Bull was struggling, McLaren was dominating, and drivers like Russell started dreaming of championship glory. The gap between Verstappen and the chasing pack was closing rapidly, and for a brief moment, it seemed like the era of Red Bull dominance might actually be coming to an end. But Azerbaijan changed everything. While Russell was fighting through illness to deliver a masterclass in consistency, finishing second alongside teammate Kimi Antonelli in fourth, he witnessed something that made his blood run cold. He watched Verstappen operate with the kind of calculated precision that has made him one of the greatest drivers in Formula One history. The race conditions in Baku told a fascinating story about the current state of F1. Unlike the sweltering heat that has plagued many circuits this season, Azerbaijan presented cooler temperatures that completely flipped the competitive order. Russell explained how this race was entirely about keeping tires warm rather than managing overheating, and drivers had to attack corners aggressively to maintain optimal tire temperatures. This shift in conditions exposed something crucial about the current championship battle. McLaren, who had been dominating in hotter conditions, suddenly found themselves struggling. Ferrari, despite looking incredibly fast in practice, ended up qualifying poorly. Meanwhile, Red Bull and Verstappen adapted seamlessly, showing the kind of versatility that separates champions from pretenders. Russell's analysis reveals something profound about what separates elite drivers from the very best. While McLaren and Ferrari made costly mistakes during qualifying, leaving their drivers out of position, Mercedes simply executed a clean weekend. They didn't do anything spectacular. They just avoided the walls and capitalized on their competitors' errors. It's a lesson in how championships are often won through consistency rather than brilliance. But here's where Russell's honesty becomes both refreshing and terrifying. Despite his excellent result, he admitted that he didn't bring his best performance over the weekend. He acknowledged making mistakes in qualifying and not feeling like he delivered his absolute peak. Yet even with this self-criticism, he managed to finish second. This raises an uncomfortable question for his rivals. If Russell can finish second while admitting he wasn't at his best, what happens when Verstappen hits peak form? The championship mathematics paint a stark picture. Russell sits fourth in the standings with 212 points, 43 points behind race winner Verstappen. In normal circumstances, that might seem like a recoverable gap with several races remaining. But Russell understands something that the numbers don't immediately reveal. Momentum in Formula One is everything, and Verstappen has it in abundance. The psychological aspect of Russell's admission cannot be understated. When a driver of his caliber publicly concedes that challenging Verstappen for third place in the championship would be premature, it sends a message throughout the paddock. It's not just about current points, it's about recognizing patterns and understanding trajectory. Russell's comments about Red Bull's recent pace improvement reveal the true source of his concern. While other teams have been consistent but not exceptional, Red Bull has been steadily climbing back to their dominant form. The team that seemed vulnerable just months ago is now looking like the unstoppable force that won multiple championships. The strategic implications of this shift extend beyond individual championships. Russell even suggested that Verstappen alone could potentially lift Red Bull to second place in the Constructors' Championship, a statement that speaks volumes about his respect for the Dutchman's abilities. When Russell jokingly referred to Team Verstappen during the post-race press conference, there was truth hidden in the humor. What makes this situation even more compelling is the upcoming Singapore Grand Prix. Russell acknowledged that McLaren will likely bounce back strongly in Singapore, given their performance advantages in hotter conditions. This creates a fascinating dynamic where different teams will favor different circuits, but the question remains, can anyone maintain consistency across all conditions, like Verstappen? The broader narrative here touches on something fundamental about elite competition. Sometimes, recognizing reality isn't about giving up, it's about understanding your true position and adjusting expectations accordingly. Russell's honesty about Verstappen's resurgence demonstrates the kind of racing intelligence that has made him one of F1's most respected drivers. As we head into the final races of the season, Russell's admission creates an intriguing subplot. While the championship fight continues at the front between other contenders, the battle for third place has become a measuring stick for how the sport's elite view Verstappen's return to form. The Azerbaijan Grand Prix may have been Russell's heroic moment, but it also served as his wake-up call. Sometimes, the most important victories teach us the hardest truths about our limitations and our competition. In accepting the Max Verstappen reality, Russell has shown that true champions know when to fight and when to acknowledge excellence in others.